From the age of 15, he accompanied his father on a military campaign to Libya. And then a year later, he fought a battle along the borders of Syria. By the age of 22, Ramses was fighting without the help of his father. The campaigns only occupied brief 2 or 3 month periods throughout the year. During the remaining months, Ramses spent time overseeing the quarrying of materials to build the many massive monuments that have become so synonymous with the ancient Egyptian civilization. During the years he spent supervising in places like Aswan, Ramses II's interest in construction must have been ignited.
He was ambitious. His buildings are the most massive there are between the Great Pyramid and the days of the Romans. He is megalomaniac only in the sense he's determined to do more than anybody else, but not outright in the abstract. If you or I were Pharaoh of Egypt, you'd have to build splendid temples, and we might be tempted to do it by size. You never know.
Building, military strategy, and the fathering of children were all part of a pharaoh's duties, and Ramses seemed to excel at each and every one. Ramses II was more than ready to take over the throne by the time his father died in 1290 BC, and from that moment on, Egypt would never be the same. Next, how Ramses' responsibilities propelled him into a world where he would become a living god. In 1290 BC, a young Ramses was crowned the third pharaoh of the 19th dynasty. His age at the time remains unknown. His exact birth date is buried back somewhere in ancient times, but scholars believe he was somewhere in his early 20s. After at least a decade of training for the highest position in the land, he was finally the king of Egypt. And his first order of business to prove his supreme power was to create monumental structures to project his omnipotent image.
Everywhere you go, Ramses has been there, because he would have wanted to put his mark on every important site. Any king would have. And of course, since Ramses was one of the later kings, his things have survived, and because they're so much larger, his things have survived better than the constructions of earlier kings.
He is regarded as, and he was regarded by many people as the most well-known of Egyptian pharaohs because he had so much more time to tell everybody about himself. There are more statues of him and more reliefs scattered up and down. They're bigger and better.
The scattered reliefs and massive colossi, stamped with Ramses' name inside what is known as a cartouche, are the result of his determination to imprint his authority on his subjects.
We can only begin to imagine what would have been in antiquity when all of them were erect and in perfect condition, gazing down at us. It's awe and fear at the same time. This was a king that you couldn't disobey because he would inspire terror by virtue of the size and the magnificence of the statues.
The ancient quarries were owned by the pharaoh, and Ramses II took full advantage of the ample stone supplies. During his almost 67-year reign, Ramses II had more monuments built than perhaps any other ruler before him. But the man behind the lasting imagery remains a mystery.
Egyptian art and Egyptian literature, for the most part, is propaganda. And so we get a very one-sided view of things. And I think that's what Ramses left us with. We know him as Egypt's greatest builder, a great family man, a great warrior, a great hero, a great superstar for his people.